You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop. And now the first descent. One story to open the night. Just enough to crack the door and let something in.
He looked normal enough when he came in that morning. Tall, skinny, balding, and clean-shaven. He was black, late 60s, with his skin having a slight gray cast, as if he'd been left out in the sun. I was working the register when he walked up with his adult son. He placed some clothes on the counter, neither of them saying a word. I smiled. "That all for you?" I ask as I begin scanning the items. He jabbed a finger towards one of the shirts. He tries to clear his throat, but it doesn't make a difference. I caught a whiff of his breath, smelled like something rotting was stuck under his tongue. There was nothing I could do as it landed with a plop squarely on my lips. I recoiled, gagging silently, and wiped it off with the back of my hand. It didn't smear, it stretched. A string of it hung between my face and my fingers for a second before snapping. Finally, the son spoke, flat, unbothered. "He wants to keep the hangers." "Oh. Yeah, that's fine." I mumbled, smearing the slime onto my pants just to be rid of it. I scanned the rest of the clothes as quickly as I could as bile rose in my throat. I chalked it up to stress. Or maybe disgust fatigue. The image of that man's spit landing on my lip kept replaying in my mind. Yellow, thick, sticky. My stomach twisted every time I thought about it. About halfway through the parking lot, I broke into a cold sweat. I'd never felt sick this fast before. Sickness is supposed to build. A scratchy throat in the morning, heaviness by lunch, maybe a fever the next day. This felt like someone had flipped a switch. I got in the car and sat there for a while, gripping the wheel and staring straight ahead. My reflection in the rearview looked pale, a little sweaty. Bags were forming under my eyes. I blinked hard, shook my head, started the engine. It was probably just a fever coming on. Probably. By the time I got home, my throat felt thick. Scratchy. Like I'd swallowed dust and it hadn't settled yet. I kept swallowing, trying to clear it, but it only made the feeling worse. My head was starting to pound, just a dull, constant pressure behind my eyes. The kind of headache that makes the inside of your skull feel swollen. I drank some water. It tasted weird. Like the aftertaste of metal. Like when you lick a battery by mistake. I peeled off my work clothes and saw that my skin was shiny. Not sweaty. Just a little too reflective. Like oil had settled into the pores. I touched my stomach. It felt warm and tender, almost bloated. My lips still felt like there was residue from where the spit had landed, even after 2 showers, even after I scrubbed the skin. I couldn't stop thinking about the way it stretched, how warm it was. How it had lingered. How the color reminded me of McDonald's honey mustard. Then the dream started. I try to move, but I have no weight. My arms drift. My legs feel miles away. There's no up or down. No air. No pressure. Just endless, viscous suspension. Nothing moves above me. Nothing below. I'm alone in it. Until something brushes my foot. I seize up and then I start to sink. Slowly at first. A lazy descent, like the liquid has decided to reclaim me. The buoyancy is gone. I try to kick, to swim, but my muscles feel slow. My arms slice through the fluid like they're cutting molasses. I go under, not that there's really a surface to begin with, but I feel the downward pull. That's my mistake. The fluid pours in. But I don't suffocate. It wants to be inside me. The first thing I notice is my eyes are blurry. When I try to rub them I can feel the mucus coming from them. Fuck, this must be one bad fucking sinus infection. Then I feel a slight breeze on my arms and I realize the bed is soaked. I go to the bathroom to take a look at the damage. My eyes are red and raw with strands of greenish mucus connecting my upper and lower eyelids like disgusting little pillars. My voice sounded rough, phlegmy and tight, like I'd spent the whole night crying into a humidifier. Which wasn't far off. My throat ached, but not like soreness. It felt coated. Like something soft and thick was clinging to the lining of my esophagus. So I decided to go to urgent care. The walk-in clinic was freezing, overlit, and smelled faintly of bleach and latex gloves. I felt like a wet ghost in a hoodie, too heavy in my bones, my eyes struggling to stay open. My skin still felt wrong. Malleable. Like it would slide off if I rubbed too hard. The doctor barely looked at me. He smiled politely, completely unfazed. Post-nasal drip. Mucus builds up and settles there. You'd be surprised how much gunk your body produces. The dream thing in waking up in a sweat. Probably just the fever. I nodded and thanked him, even though I wanted to peel off my skin and scream. It didn't stick to the tissue. It slid off. I stared at it in my sink afterward. I googled it and thought it might be a cast, but it wasn't smooth. It looked like patterns on coral. My chest ached after. Like I'd been pushing out more than just mucus. Like something was fighting back. I wasn't really hungry, I just slept off and on all day. Never feeling any better. By night I have another dream. This time, I'm inside something. It pulses around me wet and close and warm like flesh. I can feel the walls of it ripple when I move. It isn't tight, not yet, but I can feel it watching me. The sack. The thing that holds me. It knows I'm here. It's practicing. I can feel it curling inside me. The womb contracts again. Tighter. My ribs start to ache. I should be drowning. Not outside. Inside the sack with me. I'm going to be born, I think. I wake up coughing. Not like a normal cough, not that dry, tickly kind. This is deep. Wet. Like I'm trying to expel something alive from my lungs. Each heave brings a rush of hot, salty mucus up my throat, thick enough that I can barely breathe between fits. I stumble to the bathroom, leaning over the sink, still coughing. One more spasm, something that pulls from the bottom of my lungs and something solid comes up. It clicks against my teeth on its way out, small and sharp. I spit it into the basin without looking at first, too busy gasping for air, gagging on the bitter aftertaste. A tonsil stone, maybe. There are roots. Tiny, gnarled roots, like veins, but dry. Almost claw-like. It's not a stone. It's a tooth. A real one. With a crown and roots, like it had been planted inside me. Like it grew there. The little tooth glistens in the basin, nestled in a puddle of mucus like a pearl in rot. The roots are thin, too long for something that should have come from my throat. But what else could it be? I let out a dry, incredulous laugh. A sharp little bark that echoes too loudly in the bathroom, that sends me into another coughing fit. I rinsed the sink quickly, flushing the little tooth down the drain before I can think better of it. It clinks as it disappears. I try not to shudder. Totally explainable. I splash water on my face. It feels hot, heavy. I blink, hard. Lean closer. Deeper. Sometimes I felt it start in my stomach, like the mucus was building from below instead of above, like my organs were fermenting something inside of them. They came in waves of low, deep pressure that knotted my gut and made me curl into myself. I tried to drink tea. I tried to eat bread, I even made soup. The smell of the broth made me gag. Every sip felt like I was pouring it into a stomach that didn't want to be mine anymore. It churned and twisted, and when the first real cramp hit it was sharp, fast, violent. I threw up. But it wasn't food. I leaned on the sink, trembling, my face hot with fever, disgust and shame. Fuck this. I'm calling the doctor. Part 2.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Void of Terrors, by Possible, Painting, 73. Then, thud. The entire ship shuddered, a bone-rattling jolt that sent equipment clattering. Alarms blared, a cacophony of red lights flashing across the control panels I quickly turned off. I ran a quick diagnostics. Communication blocked. The crew, jolted awake, piled into the cockpit, their faces a mask of confusion and fear. Minor freak out, as Evans would say. What was that, Jacob? Sam asked, his voice laced with concern. I nodded, the logical choice. I'll go. The void outside was an oppressive blanket of black, punctuated by the distant pinpricks of stars. Tethered to me, Sam floated, a tiny silhouette against the immensity. I watched him, my breath fogging inside my helmet. The onward sun cast long, distorted shadows around the broken satellite, making it hard to discern detail. I kept missing the handles as I fumbled along. Following Sam at a safe distance, reaching the satellite, for a second, I thought I saw a hole in the hull, a jagged tear in the ship's skin, but I dismissed it as an optical illusion, a trick of the absence of light. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sam gave me the thumbs up. We worked together and brought the damaged satellite back, a cumbersome, metallic carcass. Back inside, Sam took it to his station, his brow furrowed in concentration. The day droned on, a false sense of normalcy settling over the ship. That night, I was jolted awake by a faint, persistent scraping sound. It was subtle at first, like something dragging across metal, then growing louder, more rhythmic. My heart hammered against my ribs. I lay there for a moment, listening, my imagination conjuring horrors in the silence. Before a loud crash. Curiosity, or maybe a desperate need to dispel the growing fear, propelled me out of my bunk. His eyes narrowed. Yeah, the bang, I heard it. Figured it was just the ship settling but good enough time to do rounds. A sudden, sickening crunch echoed from Sam's station. Evans and I exchanged a terrified glance. Without a word, we moved towards the sound, our footsteps unnervingly loud in the quiet hall. Evans pushed open the door to Sam's engineering bay. The smell hit me first, a coppery, metallic tang, thick and nauseating. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and that's when the corner of my eye caught something. I could have sworn it saw something. A shadow, long and slender, slunk into the vent system with an unnatural speed. It was too quick, too fluid to be human. He moved to a terminal, bringing up the security cameras. Looking over them, not to see Sam's halfway, he was a dead zone, but to see everyone's domicile doors, he began rewinding their feeds. We weren't armed. Why would we be? The closest thing to a weapon on this research vessel was a kitchen knife, maybe some gardening tools from the hydroponics bay, or a power tool from engineering. But nothing that could do that damage to a human. There's still no communication, Commander. Sam didn't get to finish the repairs, I stammered, the words catching in my throat, as I thought of my comrade. Evans glared at me, his eyes darting to the other crew members. If one of you did this, have mercy, you've damned us all. I couldn't fathom it. A human being couldn't have done this. Half of Sam was simply gone. The crew began to argue, a rising tide of disbelief and anger. Evans was persistent, convinced one of them was guilty, clinging to the flimsy evidence that he'd found him with me. Luckily that kept me off his list. But the fear of the unknown was quickly turning into resentment. Finally, unable to contain the rising tide of mutiny, Evans reluctantly opened the blast doors. The crew, shaken but convinced it was some sort of mental break from Evans, they didn't even see what we saw, they shuffled back to their quarters. Evans whispered to me, we locked down Sam's room, no one sees the crime scene, if one of them did it they'll let something slip, say something only they would know. I was barely listening to him, the thought of one of our crew, our family, doing this to someone was unthinkable, plus I couldn't shake the thought of the shadow out of my head, sliding into the vent. The next morning, the ship felt different, the air thick with unspoken dread. We gathered in the dining area. David gave a few words for Sam. He was more a father to me than my own, that man. David stammered and choked on his words before regaining himself. That man had dreams to build a new world, engineer a new planet. God rest his soul, a grim silence hanging over us as we ate our meager breakfast. David left after his speech, distracting his grief. I thought to myself. Lena and Ben, predictably breaking the silence, began to bicker about food rations. It had become a common occurrence, the close quarters wearing on everyone's nerves. Lena was accusing Ben of taking too many portions, insisting we conserve food. Dr. Ramirez screamed, a high-pitched, guttural sound of pure horror, and turned to run out the doors. I was frozen, my mind unable to process the monstrosity before me, watching as the beast coiled its neck back to swallow the bite. Then Evans grabbed me, his grip like iron, and hauled me out of the mess hall back towards the cockpit. David, our second engineer, was already there, hunched over a terminal, running diagnostics with his back to the door when Dr. Ramirez burst in, already clicking the blast door button as Evans and I walked through the door. It shut with a loud hiss of gas. Dr. Ramirez became hysterical, sobbing uncontrollably. David was trying to calm her when Evans grabbed me aside. I was shocked, his voice was shaking. We need to take that thing out, or we're dead. There's no way out of here. Dr. Ramirez and David stayed behind in the relative safety of the cockpit. Evans, ever the leader, volunteered me, of course. You're the pilot, Jacob. You know the ship's layout best. Come on, Evans whispered, his voice low, the less time the better. He pulled the cart forward, and I jumped, startled, my heart pounding. Come on, this way. We need to move quicker. Evans led the way back through the mess hall. I tried not to look, but my eyes were drawn to it, the aftermath. Lena and Ben lay intertwined, their bodies mutilated, the floor slick with blood and something else, something I didn't want to identify. The sheer brutality of it, the way their bodies were torn apart, made my stomach churn. These were my friends, the people I had laughed with, argued with, shared a journey with. Now, they were just pieces, sprawled together in some sick art piece. Their head stumps and torsos slashed, Ben's arm was missing, Lena's stump of a head containing a piece of her jaw, her tongue exposed. As we pushed through the doors, leaving the unspeakable behind, a shadow in the red caught the corner of my eye. The creature, coming as a blur of black, seemed to materialize out of thin air, launching itself at me. Its nails, impossibly sharp, dug deep into my uniform, piercing the fabric. A horrible, acrid smell, like stale blood and something else, something truly toxic, filled my lungs as it drooled onto my face. It made a series of rapid clicking sounds as it unhooked its jaw, displaying the rows of teeth, a chilling rhythm that spoke of hunger and predatory intent. "What are you doing?" I gasped, scrambling to my feet. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the cart and ran, the scraping of its wheels a frantic heartbeat in the silence of the ship. I heard the sickening clicking turn to screaming and then crunching, the alien feasting. I saw the shadow of the scene, cast by Evan's flashlight as it rolled away, his body being ripped from its midsection, the last vestige of his life. My friend, my commander, sacrificed himself for me. He didn't make it, I choked out, the words tasting like ash. Dr. Ramirez let out a fresh sob, her face buried in her hands. "Get your head on straight. We have to go. And we have to go now," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. We moved through the corridor, the only sound was the insistent scraping of the cart. Each step was a silent prayer, each breath a tightrope walk. We reached the shuttle doors, a beacon of hope in the suffocating dread. We quickly loaded the food, then scrambled for our suits. David checked the terminal. My heart sank. The shuttle was meant to be filled with fuel by the computer once the ship was in orbit and no longer needed the reserve. We couldn't do it manually. No overrides. We were stranded. Then, a flicker of an idea, a desperate, dangerous gamble, crossed David's face. "I can throttle the ship, use the inertia to throw you two on track. You'd have to detach before the main ship oxygenates and depressurizes the shuttle." My throat tightened. It was a suicide mission for him, and possibly for us. "No, David." Dr. Ramirez began to cry, a heart-wrenching sound. We said our goodbyes, a hurried, tearful farewell. David left for the cockpit, his shoulders squared as he turned the corner. Dr. Ramirez was having a full-blown panic attack as we suited up. She zipped mine as I hinted for her to turn. I can't breathe," she gasped, her hands trembling as she tried to pull her suit over her arms. Bad time to be claustrophobic, I thought grimly. "Doctor, I need you, I can't do this without you," I tried to assure her. She didn't lighten up. Getting impatient, I put on my helmet. I was already fully suited, but she still needed help. "Come on, Ramirez, breath with me, in. And out, come on with me," she joined in. And out, in. And out. David's voice crackled over the comms, a distant, metallic echo. "Ready, Jacob. Just need the signal." "Copy, stand by," I spoke firmly into the comms unit on my suit. That's when we heard a thumping from above, a heavy, deliberate sound that traveled to the vent on the wall. My blood ran cold. The air even in my suit went stale. The creature sprung out the vent, a black, spindly horror as it landed on its feet, standing to its hind legs. It let out a piercing scream that vibrated through my bones, and I felt a sickening crack as the glass on my helmet fractured. I tried to pull free, to help her, but she wouldn't let go. Her grip tightened, even as her lifeblood spilled onto the floor. I looked at her eyes, wide with pain and terror as her body twitched with each bite from the beast, and in that moment, I knew. She was holding me, keeping me there, and she couldn't let go. I unhooked my glove, tearing my hand free from her grasp. I watched as she pulled the glove in, her last cling to life. The ship lurched forward, fast, before a massive veer left. I felt the inertia throw me back, then the sudden, freeing sensation of the detachment. The shuttle shot from the rear port of the ship, detaching just as I heard the shuttle ship begin to pressurize. Leaving a trail of gas and oxygen, a gaseous tether to David. The smoke was broken a moment later, as I saw the beast flung out the ship from the docking bay, into the void of space. My head throbbed as I watched. I quickly realized, my suit's oxygen was leaking, a steady hiss from my wrist and unloved hand. My hand, exposed to the vacuum of space, was already turning an alarming shade of blue. I fumbled for the roll of patch tape, my fingers clumsy with the cold, and sealed the rip around my wrist and then covered my hand in a makeshift bandage. I breathed slowly, deeply, calming my ragged nerves. Then, with a click, I flipped the switch to pressurize the shuttle. I waited a minute, before removing my helmet. The hissing of the shuttle as it filled with gas was deafening, even through the helmet. The 2 weeks to Mars were a blur of fragmented sleep and waking nightmares. The putrid stench of blood and bile, the clicking of those talons and its jaw, the screams of my friends, it was all replayed on an endless loop in my mind. I barely ate, barely slept, I lost 25 pounds in that desolate journey. The beast claw lay in the corner on the shuttle, tucked away from my view. I couldn't bring myself to, every time I did I saw it piercing another friend. Taking another member of my family. Back home, they were watching. A world, holding its breath, as the Mars 1 shuttle spun wildly, a tiny, fragile speck against the red backdrop. In the spinning, the G-forces pressed down on me, crushing me. My exposed hand, the one that had been in the vacuum, was turning a terrifying shade of navy as my arms were forced forward. I felt consciousness slipping, the world fading to black. I felt a surge of raw, desperate will. My mother's face flashed in my mind, Dr. Ramir's last grip, Evan's sacrifice. I reached with my good hand and dropped the fins. It gave little relief. My blue, lifeless hand, still stretching, grasping. My head felt like it was going to pop as my bandage caught around the lever. I winced as I pulled, the tape from the patch roll tearing my already dead skin. The wings of the shuttle dropped down, a jarring shift that slowed the spin. The parachute billowed open, a magnificent, white blossom against the crimson sky. From the Mars rover, a whole week later than scheduled, the people watched as the shuttle descended. It came to the landing pad with a jarring thud. I looked closely at the crack in my helmet, my gaze soon fixed on my now black hand, devoid of life, a price of survival. I walked to the shuttle doors, my legs feeling like lead. Using my forearm to spin the hatch, I stepped back as it fell open, taking a deep breath as I looked out. The light was blindingly different from the shuttle, from Earth even. The rays of heat cast like a brilliant sun on an alien world. The world was utterly, breathtakingly beautiful. A vast, desolate landscape of ochre and rust, stretching to a horizon under a sky of muted salmon. Pillars of segmented rock rose like towers. And there, in the distance, bathed in the Martian light, was the home base NASA's AI had built, a cluster of gleaming modules. The rover, a silent sentinel, waited patiently at the landing zone. Its robotic camera arm zoomed in on me as I stepped onto the Martian sand. The sheer, overwhelming wave of it, the pain, the beauty, broke through me. I fell to my knees, the dust of Mars coating my suit in a cloud, and I wept. Not just for relief, but for the faces I would never see again, for the horrors I had witnessed, and for the silence that now stretched before me, a silence I would carry for the rest of my life. Through my choked sobs, and cracked helmet I uttered 3 words, my commander fresh on my mind. 1. Giant. Leap.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
There are certain things about nature that are both fascinating and terrifying. A bear can smell you from over 10 miles away, a sturgeon can grow as long as a car, and a cornered prey animal can experience a burst of energy to stay alive from a hunting predator. For a little bit, it just crawled slowly along the house's side, and I had finished getting everything out for the night, and right as I began locking my car, it flitted off into the early evening air. So quickly that it was past the tree line by the time I got to the door to head inside. And that was the end of it. I had a normal enough night after that, and went to bed. I quickly went to grab my phone left behind in the bathroom, and pointed it at the glass. I snapped a photo, and a bright light blinded me. I cursed at myself when I forgot to turn the flash off. But while I had blinked spots out of my eyes, I saw the bug on the window open some kind of shell on its back to fly away. As I watched it do so, in shockingly slow motion, I found myself surprised. A pair of wings had emerged from the bug's back that, even in the slow-crawling sunrise, stood out. A mixing of dark and light spots and swirls decorated the insect's wings in strange, almost shape-like patterns. Like a Rorschach picture was painted onto the surface of the wing. I went back to my room, put my glasses on, and took a look at the picture. While most of the photo was a bright ball of light, I did manage to catch it. It was the same type of bug that I had seen the other day. The disbelief was quick, but it made sense. Some insects were more active at night, and I had no control what bugs were coming onto the property. As long as nothing happened, it would be all good. But it wasn't long before things got different. A couple weeks after seeing the first one, I had arrived home late in the day, close to sunset, and the sight that greeted me was an absolute shock. Bugs, dozens of them, all over the siding of my house directly facing the driveway. They were crawling and flapping their wings in place as they rested on the wall. The sight made my skin crawl, as if the imaginary scenario of myself being covered in so many bugs had manifested into reality. The idea of being outside with those things made me shiver, but I shook it off, opening the door and staring into the window as I shut it. From the reflection, I saw some of the bugs had jumped off the house to flit in the air for a moment before settling back down. I locked up my car, and at the noise, the bugs began to fly. In a vague grouping, they rose into the sky, vanishing out of sight into the shadows of the woods, as if swallowed by a massive void. That night was when things really began to settle in. After the sun went down, I had this strange feeling I was being watched. The neighborhood I live in is pretty isolated, everyone has a good amount of space between one another, so I never had to worry about anyone nosy. But the whole night, no matter what I did as a distraction, I felt a pair of eyes were on me the entire time. For the next month or so, they showed up a lot more. Those minuscule numbers of earlier days had tripled. They could cover an entire wall if they wanted to. They hung out on the sides, the porch frame, the bathroom window, even covering the back door light to the point of completely blacking it out. It was so sudden it made my head spin, and there seemed to be hundreds of them a week. To the point that I began to notice little details I never saw on them before. Each one had a different appearance, shade of red in the eyes, range of sizes, and the wing patterns, each one distinct and unique. I did notice one thing about them though, they seemed to be repulsed by noise. Whether it be me sneezing, the car door slamming, the horn on accident, or even the TV being loud enough inside. This made keeping my house creepy bug-free, and to help put my mind at ease. I knew they were bugs, and I, 1,000,000 times larger and stronger, could easily take them out. But the eyes on those things, they were unnerving. I've never been one to be afraid of bugs, but something about these things give me a bad feeling. I didn't even know what species they were, since internet searches and books from the library were no help, so I have no idea how I can get rid of them. I didn't waste any time, I bolted for the door, scrambling to get the key into the lock. I had only a little bit, and I can already heard the screaming static getting closer. A scattering of shadows ran across my skin as my nervous hands began to shake and drop the keys onto the ground. I went to grab them as fast I could, but it was too late. The bugs had gathered around me in a second, buzzing all around me in a noise so loud my ears hurt, and I could feel them landing on me, biting and crawling up and down my skin and trying to get into my clothes. "We can see you. You can't hide in there forever." From outside, I can still hear them. I can hear the bugs talking to me. Threatening me. Saying they would follow me. Saying they will hurt, kill, and use my corpse for their eggs. I'm going to hold out for a little while longer, and hopefully I can last long enough to get them out of my life, before they find a way back into mine. And soon, because I am fairly certain I heard my name being whispered outside my motel door.
Hey! You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
You would probably be surprised at the number of bodies one can find out in the desert. This pissed Cameron off. He didn't grow up here, so he didn't understand the rules. There's always a snitch, there's always a winner, there's always a freak, and there's always someone who fantasizes about killing you. Even if he understood, he'd never have believed that I was both the freak and the person who fantasized about killing him. This enchanted Cameron because he has a Madonna/whore complex the size of Babylon. I was his pure, unsullied princess. This is why he paid half my bills, supported me emotionally, and asked nothing in return. That's not to say he didn't have sex. Cameron was a bona fide man whore. That's the only reason he went to raves and parties, the girls. We were at just such a party the night I met Daddy. But I messed up. We were sitting in the corner, starting to play around. He was looking at me in a way no one else ever does, bright and warm and hopeful, like I'm the most important person in the world. I could feel myself teetering on the edge of the pedestal. Then he leaned in to kiss me. I panicked. Before I knew it, I was running. Only when he tapped my shoulder did I realize I'd been crying. I wiped my eyes hastily and turned. "Hey." Cameron slurred slightly. "Demetria and I are leaving. Will you get home okay?" "Her name's not Demetria," I said in as bored a tone as I could muster. "It's Brittany." We stared at one another for what felt a terribly long time. He was waiting for something, and I knew it. But I couldn't give it. Even if I could, I'd stop mattering the second he got it. I looked down at the floor. Amid the chewing gum, spilled drinks, gouges, and stains, I saw 3 words written in black Sharpie. "Come to Daddy." Halfway across the warehouse was another message and another arrow. "Keep coming." I followed it to the back wall, to another Sharpie message. A body. An oil drum sat next to Daddy. I withdrew, gagging, when I saw the half-rotten sludge of dead vermin at the bottom. A nightstand sat on his other side, bearing a plastic container filled with Hershey Kisses. A hand-lettered sign read. A second later, he shuddered and began to chew. His head lolled weakly. With a heavy grunt, he flopped forward so that his eye sockets were trained on me. Something glinted within, dark and iridescent like dirty oil. He swallowed the kiss, and spoke. "What do you want from me?" He lurched forward, desiccated body hitting the concrete with a clatter. "I can give you one thing. Any one thing. What shall it be? Except I didn't know what to wish for. I didn't want another life. Why bother, when I barely want to live? I couldn't have Cameron, he'd have to turn into something he's not before that would ever be a possibility. I didn't want money. I didn't want a house. I didn't want a better job. All of these are changes. At some point, every change causes pain. I've had enough pain for a lifetime. Daddy's dark eyes flared. That does complicate things. He smiled, papery skin cracked and split like porcelain varnish. But it makes them interesting. Give me a rat. He pointed to the vermin barrel. I need protein. It didn't occur to me to resist. This was the first time in memory that I actually felt alive. I snatched a mushy tail from the morass. Only half a rat emerged, melting into translucent rot before my eyes. More rats. I don't get it. You're my client. Clients pay the provider's price. You pay this provider's price in bodies. I need 2 eyes, 2 lungs, 1 stomach, 1 liver, 1 skin, he continued, rattling off seeming every organ in the human body. Then he finished, and each must come from a different person. I contemplated this briefly. You'll show me what I want - something, I added silently, that will make me happy, and you'll give it to me? He wagged a finger. Sorry, darling. Names are power here. But an oath upon my name, spoken or otherwise, is unbreakable. I pretended I was her ride home, and led her downstairs. Daddy warped and shuddered and grew into something that blotted the lights, something I couldn't look at without panicking, and swallowed her whole. He'd grown skin, thick and fleshy, lipless, it reminded me absurdly of a squashily upholstered sofa. Dull, cracked teeth glinted in the recessed mouth. Will I have more tonight? So I fed Daddy people that no one would miss. It's easy to find them if you know what to look for. Men with sucked-in faces who ride children's bicycles, women with nice bodies and ancient, haunted faces, dust-caked teenagers and old men sleeping under tarps in the desert. It took a month. I don't have much, so it didn't take long. Cameron caught me as I dropped the last bag in the trunk. His eyes were wet. She doesn't mean anything, he said. I climbed into my car and drove off. After a couple of brutally cold nights under the stars, I moved into the warehouse with Daddy. All said and done, it was a relief. Then Demetria followed him. The fight was a truly spectacular example of a white trash beatdown. He and Demetria were banned, and I got written up. It didn't really bother me. Daddy ate him quickly and spit the bones into the rat barrel. Then he burped, enormous fleshy cheeks beating like sails in the wind, and sat down. We're almost done, he said. Only 1 body left. I did a quick calculation. 2. A heart and a brain. He hesitated theatrically. There's a special rule for the heart. He laughed. You misunderstand. I don't need this - he tapped my chest, tired little muscle. I need your heart. Only, it's inside someone else. What, I asked levelly, are you talking about? A heart that is yours is a heart that loves you. He smiled and nodded. But he could help me get what I wanted. If he really loved me, that would make him happy. Wouldn't it? Only when he saw Daddy, hulking and grinning under the fluorescent lights, did Cameron realize that something was wrong. Daddy stood up. He looked awful, 9 feet tall and completely wrong, a hybrid of every childhood nightmare. Daddy charged. Cameron shoved me toward the stairs. I felt his hand on my back, felt his pulse beating through his wrist, for a fraction of a second. Then Daddy grew, blotting the lights, bones creaking and cracking as he exploded into something I couldn't comprehend. And then, like all the others before him, Cameron was gone. What I want. I could feel my blood pressure rising. The thing I want. He grinned and dropped to his haunches, posing like a runner about to take off. Here it is. He took a deep breath. The stillness was excruciating, poised overhead like a crushing weight. Then Daddy opened his mouth and threw up. Bloody and foul, full of shattered bones and flesh, it flooded toward me like a tide. My skin prickled and stung. I thought of feathers, small and hard and piercing the skin as they forced their way up. I turned and ran. I did not fly through the air, but I flew across the sand. Stars lit my way, a million eyes glazing the desert in silvery darkness. Sometime around dawn, just as gold and red bloomed across the horizon, I tripped and fell. I remember watching the sunrise. Then everything went dark. Cameron found me. When we got home, he helped me into the shower. I sat blankly as dust and dried blood skirled down the drain. I lifted his shirt, half expecting to see Demetria's embellished name, and froze. Just 7 words written in black Sharpie.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
How I Became a God, by Britton R.T. Life was hard crawling in the dirt of the forest floor, treating anything remotely edible as a banquet to be cherished. As I slowly grew, she eventually disappeared, leaving me and 2 of my remaining brothers alone at a very young age. They both perished shortly after. Surviving in the jungle while mentally disabled and handicapped was mostly a factor of sheer luck, though at the time I thought myself to be quite adept. I never stayed in one place for long and I moved very slowly but carefully. My diet consisted of anything I could find laying around which was edible, mostly small animals I could catch, but I could go hungry for very long periods of time. Predators were always a threat, and being crippled, running was not an option. So I learned to hide. I learned to read my environment. I learned when to be loud and when to be quiet. And against all odds, I somehow survived. Once again, in retrospect, I mistook luck for cleverness. And it did. Try to at least. The bird took flight the moment the jaguar leapt and it soared into the canopy, the cat pursuing. I remained still for some time to see if it would return, but eventually eased out into the small clearing. There wasn't much of interest, so I wiggled up the small hill the bird had been resting on, only to find when I reached the top that it was in fact a giant bird's nest. And to my delight, resting inside were 3 very large eggs of unusual color. But that was when things started to change. Over the next few days I started to notice things I hadn't been aware of before. Small things at first, observations about my surroundings that I hadn't noticed before. The world looked a bit more colorful than it did, shapes a little more defined. I was able to pay attention to more things at once. As days turned to weeks I started realizing I could make plans that were more sophisticated than just waiting silently for something to run by so I could grab it, or looking for scraps laying around. I started to devise clever traps, using rocks and other features of my environment to help me catch my food. Choosing my resting locations in places where bushes and leaves would ensure I could hear predators on the ground. I was still a cripple, but I was growing smarter. I also began to grow bigger. A lot bigger. I had been an underfed runt most of my life, but in the span of several months I had become a veritable giant. Well nourished now and nearly 6 feet, all muscle. I still had to crawl around, but I could do so with a speed and vigor I had never known. I felt optimistic and elated, yet I had no idea what was still to come. As months turned to years, I was able to walk for the first time in my life. Few predators could stand before me now, as I stood nearly 12 feet tall, a titan of the forest, with a strength to match. I strolled carelessly through the trees, eating what I wished, when I wished, where I wished. I built my first house out of stone and fallen trees. I was the king of the jungle. And I climbed my first tree. I will never forget it. Hundreds of feet up in the forest canopy, I finally reached the sunlight atop the tallest tree I could find and looked out upon my domain. Endless green as far as the eye could see in every direction. A playground which had once threatened to consume me, but which was now mine to explore freely. And so I did. I nursed it back to health, fed it, earned its trust, and it became my little companion. There were no names back then, but none were needed. For the first time in my life, I felt genuine love for this one specific creature. My first friend. I had to take great care, as my growing never seemed to cease. By my memory and estimates, I may have been nearly 30 feet tall by then, and this little monkey was barely a fly by comparison. But the joy he brought me as we traveled together, as he gathered tiny fruits for me, and as he slept peacefully next to me, made me realize how lonely I had been all those decades wandering the forests all by myself. Always just watching, but never feeling like more than an observer anymore. When he finally died peacefully of old age, I was of course heartbroken. I knew it was coming. I had seen how he slowly weakened and deteriorated. While I seemed to defy the years and continue to grow, time shifted the world around me. Landscapes slowly changed, rivers altered, animals came and went. After he died, I retreated back to a more observational phase of my life again, mostly wandering the forest and indulging in the sights and sounds around me. I don't know how long I spent like that before they found me. Other monkeys, but these ones were even more like me. They were extremely clever. They made noises at each other in rapid and consistent manners. They used tools like me, maybe even more clever than the ones I had devised. And of course they were terrified of me. I was a giant, towering over them, looming nearly as tall as the trees. I mostly left them alone but would sometimes go and watch over them. They built strange houses out of sticks and leaves, not too dissimilar to the one I had built out of rocks before I no longer had the need for such a thing. They even appeared to be able to wield fire, and lit up the night in ways that I had only seen from the thunder of an angry sky. One day some of them started leaving strange carvings in stone around where I slept. I asked one of them about the artifacts, a youngling who had come to ask for my help removing a mighty tree which threatened to fall on his hut. He told me that they were left as offerings, so that I might bless them with good fortune. He told me how their lives are hard and short, and then told me that a god such as myself could surely make their lives better. After many years though, the number of friends grew. And grew. And grew. Eventually, there were so many that they began to fight each other over what seemed to be the infinite bounty of the forest. Their noises changed and I could no longer understand all of them anymore, only the ones I remained near. They began to ask me for help or blessings hunting other people, fighting other villages. I always refused. The tipping point came when the village I attempted to sacrifice a young girl in my name in order to gain my support in an upcoming raid. I had tried to tolerate them and understand them, but their pettiness had boiled over and I was exacerbated. There were too many people, too many villages, too many conflicts, too much sadness. It felt like I was crawling through the mud again, a dumb cripple, unsure what to do or where to go, and with little means to accomplish anything. I realized the moment they placed that little girl on the altar that I had forgotten what it meant to be helpless. And in those years, my heart grew nearly as fast as I did. When she died, I was once again heartbroken. It was a tragic accident. Nearly 140 feet now, I was so massive it was hard to even move through the woods anymore without trampling everything in my path. I tended to just remain in the same spot near the top of the waterfall as a result, and spent most of my time asleep or staring out over the vast and beautiful jungle, framed by the mountains hundreds of miles behind it. I don't know why she had come so close to me while I was sleeping that night, or what cruelty of fate caused me to roll over, but when I woke up I found I had accidentally crushed her to death. I could barely even recognize her. I had seen the little people cry before, but that was the first time I myself had ever truly wept. I hadn't even realized I was capable of it. I retreated deeper into the forest after that, avoiding everything. Everyone was so small, and I was so dangerously large. I just wanted to go hide in a cave somewhere and never come out, but even finding such a large cavern now would seem nearly impossible. As was so often the case in my life, I do not know how much time passed, probably ages, but eventually the little people found me again as they always did. The forest's devastation was so great that I could not even see the trees on the other side of the city. I just stood there, towering over everything, and felt horror ripple through me from my head to my toes. I felt as though this was somehow all my fault. I should have known this would happen. I should never have helped the little people, for they were so smart that the forest itself had become their prey. Or maybe I should have helped them more, taught them better to be stewards of the forest, not destroyers of it. I immediately left without a word back the way I came. They followed me yelling and crying my name for some while before eventually giving up and returning to their desolation of a home. I remember at one point asking one of their supposed wise men what had happened to the old little people who I had once seen doing the same thing. He told me their cities had been abandoned long ago and they had retreated back into the forest. This gave me some hope, and I believed that in time they too would return to the forest. I did not tell him my thoughts though, I simply sent him away. When I peeked out of my cave, I stood up and looked over the trees to see smoke filling the air and huge swaths of forest completely burned to the ground. I went to go see what was happening and observed the little people burning and chopping and tearing at the trees with strange tools I had never before seen. Noisy tools. Violent tools. Some of them spotted me and it wasn't long before they were screaming and fleeing en masse. I couldn't understand, there were no crops here, no city. Why were they destroying the forest, burning it to the ground even? Not even using the wood from the trees as they used to do. I walked through the devastation and saw it stretched out seemingly forever. In the distance I saw strange buildings, very different from the stone and thatch ones I was familiar with, and vast herds of unusual animals I had never encountered before. The forest had turned to grassland at the hands of the little people. Time passed, but an old man found me one day and spoke to me in new and unusual noises. At first I ignored him, but he persisted and slept nearby every night, refusing to leave. He would come every day and make the same noises at me. He seemed harmless and I felt lonely, so on a whim I decided to let him stay for a while so that he might teach me the new noises. We were eventually able to speak more clearly. He gave me his name, Fabio, and he was also born in the forest. He told me many strange, wonderful, and terrible things. He told me about how the land was now used for raising cattle. He told me about how the silver bird was in fact a machine created by little people. He told me what he knew about science, about history, about society. That there were entire nations of little people all over the world. That the little people had conquered it all. Eventually he told me I would need to face my fears and do something about the encroaching little people, who grew closer every day. But I knew he could see my wounded spirit, and he was kind and let me rest, never pressing me. He knew the little people had broken my heart. And that is why I trust you with my story. I hope you are able to share it and help me, for while I was once called a god, I am just as helpless as a baby snake crawling, crippled in the mud on the forest floor. As I write this log of his recording, we are setting up camp less than a day from the airstrip where we will be picked up. I don't know if anyone will believe me, or if they will think I photoshopped our pictures, but the rest of the team agrees we need to tread lightly, lest we bring him unwanted attention. But I have to do something. I still remember the first words he spoke to me, after all those first days of terror and uncertainty, not knowing if we had discovered a monster, not knowing if we were going to die. But the monster turned out to be anything but. I will never forget what he said, the first time he spoke to us. I need you. Every day my home gets smaller, and the little people grow. Every year I must hide deeper and deeper to avoid their shiny birds and stinging smoke.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
My bird feeder keeps getting emptied, by Ninja Breadman 00. So a few months back my uncle died. Mum passed away a few years earlier, and since the family was always small I was pretty much the only one left. So that left me the main inheritor. Mostly it was a few family keepsakes, a quattro he got when he was 22 back in the 80s and kept like new, as well as a bit of money. Anyway, so I figured may as well try to Disney up the place, make it so birds and critters are around. Best way to do that, get a bird feeder, right? Bird finds food, bird'll come back for food later, I get videos of birds. Bird wins, I win, everybody gets what they want. I started working on fixing the barn, which mainly consisted of watching videos on what to fix and how. But I set up my old doorbell camera facing the bird feeder since it has a night vision and motion sensor, so I'd be able to get footage of the birds. That was 2 weeks and I'm really starting to regret doing it. I scrub along to it and start playing the feed. The feeder is there, all green looking in the night mode. Then from out of frame emerges a black shape, about the size of a human. It moves towards the feeder and stops. It seemed like it almost walked past it, and only noticed it at the last minute. Then I recognized it. It was one of those old school plague doctor costumes. Like the ones where the guy has a bird mask and a leather cloak. I guess I can see why it's funny. But the joke only has payoff if you know it worked. I checked where my neighbors lived on maps and fired up the quattro and go to let either one know that I got the video and I get the reference, and they can stop. One was this old dude, like 4 foot nothing. Said it wasn't him, and I'd believe it. On the other side was a stay-at-home mom with 2 young kids, who said her husband was deployed. So it couldn't be them either. With them both ruled out, that must mean it had to be someone else. So I watched the footage again, to see where the guy went. Because at least it might point in which direction they're coming from. It wasn't all that clear. He came from one direction and left in the other. The next night I set up the camera at a different angle to see if I could see where he was coming from. Same thing, he walks from off screen, eats his fill and walks away. But I still couldn't work out where he was coming from. Although this time it was at about 3 a.m. The next day none of them have him on it. Feeder cam shows him turn up for the seed, but none of the distant cameras show him. Set them closer. But still the same thing. That was last night. Well, I've had enough of this shit. I've been hesitant to escalate things because who knows what that will do, but enough's enough. Tonight I'm going to be waiting in the front room waiting for the motion detector to go off.
And there you have it. Dear listeners, one final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I get it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.